Elias woke to the sound of city life continuing without him. Horns honked, street vendors shouted, children ran barefoot through puddles, and the smell of fried plantain mingled with exhaust. He tried to ignore it, tried to convince himself it was temporary, that someone would call, someone would rescue him. But no one came. The city that had once bent to his will now barely noticed his presence. He had no money, no home, no status, nothing but the clothes on his back and the aching pride that refused to let him beg. Yet each day the pangs of hunger forced him closer to a reality he had long ignored. The streets were alive with life that he had never seen when he was at the top. Beggars huddled in corners, their hands outstretched, their eyes weary yet hopeful. Children scavenged through trash, laughing and crying in equal measure. He watched them from the shadows, feeling a sting in his chest that had nothing to do with hunger. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky a dusty orange, Elias found a small alcove beneath a crumbling building to rest. That was when he met Mama Ruth. She was small and fragile, her frame bent with age and years of hardship, yet her eyes held a fierce warmth that seemed to peer right through him. She was counting a few coins she had collected that day, humming softly under her breath. "You look lost, my son," she said without looking up. Her voice carried authority, but also kindness. Elias was taken aback. Most people on the street ignored him, even in this state of destitution. I am, he admitted finally. His pride protested, but hunger and exhaustion outweighed it. Mama Ruth chuckled softly. "Most people who come here think they are just passing through, but the street, it has a way of keeping you if you let it." She looked at him carefully. "You need to eat." He hesitated. His pride was still alive, burning quietly. "I don't need charity," he said. She finally met his gaze. "No one asks for charity here, my son. We ask for survival." There was a lesson in her eyes, one that he couldn't fully grasp yet. He nodded slowly and accepted the small loaf of bread she offered. The taste was humble, but it felt like manna to a man who had feasted on the finest foods for decades. He had never been so aware of flavor, of necessity, of gratitude. Over the next few days, he returned to the same corner, watching Mama Ruth navigate the streets with grace and authority. She was a queen in a kingdom that no one recognized. She knew every beggar, every passerby, every hidden alley where food or opportunity could be found. Elias followed her lead, learning how to ask for work, how to find scraps without humiliation, how to survive the indifference of those around him. Each day chipped away at the walls he had built around himself. The arrogance that had fueled his rise as a billionaire now felt empty and cruel. He began to see the world differently, not as a place to dominate, but as a web of human struggles, each one deserving respect. He saw mothers crying quietly in alleys, young boys stealing not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice, and men who pretended to be strong yet shook with cold and fear each night. Elias began to interact slowly with the people he had once ignored. At first, it was simple, asking for directions, sharing scraps, offering to carry a bundle for someone. But as he spent more time, he started to listen. Each person had a story, a struggle, a pain that mirrored and yet differed from his own. There was a beggar named Daniel who had once been a driver for a wealthy family, now broken by debt and misfortune. There was a girl, barely 15, who sang on street corners to feed her younger siblings. Each encounter was a mirror, reflecting pieces of himself he had refused to see in the mirror of his luxurious past. One rainy afternoon, he helped a man whose feet were cut and bleeding. his sandals useless in the mud. As he pressed strips of cloth to the wounds, the man looked up at him and smiled faintly. "You don't have to do this, brother." "I know," Elias replied quietly, "but I can." It was a small gesture, almost insignificant, yet it sent a warmth through him that money had never given him. It was here, in these small acts of compassion, that he began to understand the depth of wealth beyond currency. Human connection, dignity, the simple gift of noticing someone. Mama Ruth watched him, her eyes softening. "You are learning, Elias. The street doesn't forgive laziness or arrogance, but it does teach those willing to listen." He nodded, swallowing pride he didn't realize was still lodged in his throat. And slowly, he began to listen, not just to Mama Ruth, but to the city, to the people, to the stories around him. The days blurred into weeks. Elias learned to sleep in the hidden alcoves of buildings, to find meals in unexpected places, to navigate the streets with caution and care. Yet, in the quiet moments, when he was alone with the cold and the ache of hunger, he reflected on the life he had lost, the empire, the parties, the people who had fawned over him. None of it mattered now. What mattered was this: survival, humility, and understanding a world he had never truly seen. One morning, he woke to find Mama Ruth coughing violently. Her small frame shook, and he rushed to her side. "Mama, what is it?" "Just old age catching up," she whispered. "I'll be fine." But her face betrayed her pain. Elias felt an unfamiliar panic. This woman, who had been his guide, his teacher in the ways of this hidden world, needed him. He ran through the streets, seeking medicine, coins, anything to help her. For the first time, he experienced fear, not for himself, but for another person. And when he finally returned with what little he could gather, Mama Ruth looked at him and smiled weakly. "You are not the man you were, Elias. You are better." He didn't respond, only helped her rest, feeling the weight of his own vulnerability. It was in these moments, in the shared struggle and care, that he began to feel something he had long ignored: empathy, a real, tangible understanding of another human being suffering. Through the weeks, he noticed the patterns of the streets, the rhythms of survival, the alliances and conflicts among beggars, the quiet acts of generosity that went unnoticed by the wealthier world. He began keeping track of resources, learning where food could be found, which streets were safer, which opportunities might arise for those willing to work quietly. He wasn't planning to rebuild his empire, not yet. He was building something more subtle: knowledge. Knowledge of life as it truly was, not filtered through wealth or status. One evening, as he shared a small meal with a group of beggars he had come to know, one of them, a woman named Grace, turned to him. "You've changed, Elias. You used to look at us like we were nothing. Now?" She paused. "Now you see us." He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I see you," he said simply. It was more than words. It was truth. For the first time in his life, he felt like part of something larger than himself. And yet, beneath the gratitude and newfound humility, a seed of restlessness remained. He wondered how he could take what he had learned from the streets and use it to create something meaningful. Perhaps, he thought, his journey was not just survival, but preparation. Preparation for a return, not to the arrogance of wealth, but to the strength of understanding, compassion, and purpose. Nights were the hardest. Lying beneath the stars, or what passed for stars amidst city lights, he remembered the life he had lost. He mourned it, not for the material, but for the illusion of control it had given him. And in that morning, he realized that losing everything had gifted him something priceless: clarity. Through it all, Mama Ruth remained a steady presence, guiding him with quiet wisdom. Remember, Elias, the streets do not define you. They reveal you, and what they reveal is worth more than gold. He listened, absorbing the words as if they were a lifeline. Slowly, day by day, he shed the last vestiges of arrogance and pride. The billionaire within him had died, but something gentler, more resilient, and infinitely wiser was taking shape. He began to help others, in small ways at first, sharing food, offering a warm word, protecting those weaker than himself. He saw the impact of these gestures ripple outward: a smile, a nod, a simple hand offered. It was wealth of a different sort. And in that wealth, Elias discovered purpose. By the time weeks had passed, the city no longer felt hostile or indifferent. It felt alive, full of stories, full of lessons. And Elias was learning them all, one encounter at a time. He understood that the street was harsh, unrelenting, but honest. Here, he could not hide behind money, status, or charm. Here, he was simply a man, and that was both terrifying and liberating. Through this life on the streets, Elias began to transform. The lessons were harsh, but each one was a stepping stone towards something greater. He realized that wealth without understanding is empty, power without empathy is hollow, and though he had nothing, he had begun to possess something far more valuable: insight, humility, and the first stirrings of true purpose.